Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to another episode of Wake Up American. This is your daily American English pronunciation show where we help you get your 5 to 10 minutes of pronunciation practice in for the day. To guide you in this process, hello, my name is Jeff. It rhymes with breath. It's one of the four keys to a natural sound in American English, including placement, pitch, breath, and trying to weaken your consonant sounds. And today we're going to kind of be talking about that, but I received a question recently asking me, "Hey, Jeff, can you talk about job interviews and things like that?" And so that's kind of a tricky question for me because we have talked about job interviews. If you look at the video description, I've included a couple links to some previous videos that we've done on this topic. So I didn't want to just kind of repeat the same things um, over and over again. Right? I don't. The videos are there. It's helpful content. I think you guys will enjoy it. Um, Hopefully those links came off. If those links didn't come off, you can find them also in the video description. Kind of may have gotten a little bit messed up there. You can find them in the video description as well. So just to know, check out the video description. There's going to be a lot of links there. I also have some other links I'm going to be sharing with you that will also be helpful. And a lot of the points that we're going to discuss um, are not my original thoughts. I've included the source video where some of them come from. They're just going to be kind of good tips to know if you're doing a lot of if you have an online job interview or if you're doing it in person. Okay. So definitely take a look again at the video description for those links. They're going to be very helpful for you. Our videos and some other ones as well. So, talking about some strategies you want to consider. I don't want to focus too much on phrasing and I don't want to focus too much on vocab because, again, we already have videos for those things. So, instead, I want to focus on pronunciation techniques that I think are going to be really fundamental to giving a good impression to your potential employer and to achieving a natural sound. So, we're going to dive right into those. And if you have your own tips, feel free to share them and things like that. So, our first tip that I'd like to say is that firstly, make sure that you're using enough contrast with your pitches. In a job interview, now things become even higher stakes because now you can lose something and you lose something very, very quickly. So, this is where pitch in contrast elements become extremely important because if I'm just kind of doing the interview and I'm just like, oh, hey, this is my name and I'm glad to be here. This is about how I am. I work well with teams. I do that. You don't sound very interested. Honestly, you just don't sound engaged for the job. Having been in a position to hire when I was the director at a language center, I had to hire teachers. There is such a thing as energy level. They're thinking about, do I want to hire this person? And if you're coming off, for instance, as low energy, unenthusiastic, which is something that can happen if you're not using a wide enough range of pitches, then you're pairing that on top of already other issues, like for instance, like body language issues can come up. If the person literally has a hard time understanding you, those are all issues that compound. And so you really want to make sure you're using pitch because pitch is a tool we use in American English to convey emotion, to demonstrate knowledge and expertise, to show enthusiasm. And if we're lacking some of those things, it can make our job a little bit more difficult. Again, just a quick comparison. If you walk into a room, you're like, "Hi, my name is Jeff. I'm here for an interview. Oh, thanks so much for having me." Not maybe the most effective intro, right? Whereas like, "Hey, my name's Jeff. Thanks so much for having me for an interview. Really glad to be here." Something like that. We need to really work on increasing our range of high pitches, but also our range of low pitches. We have shadowing videos that you can practice. We have job interview shadowing videos as well. I would encourage you also to listen to mock interviews online and things like that. So that's kind of the first tip is make sure you have enough contrast with your pitches. The next thing I'm going to say is that don't feel like you have to rush. You can go slow, add pauses, Something that can be uncomfortable for people is even just trying to add a 1 second pause. If you're not sure what a 1 second pause sounds like, this is it. Pausing, I know we have gotten into these associations of pausing where we assume it's a negative thing. It shows a lack of fluency, when in reality, pausing is actually a great sign of confidence, a great way to break up your speech and make you actually sound more natural and also understandable. It's an easy way to separate your thought groups. And remember, one of our golden techniques is when you change thought groups, change your pitch level. When you change thought groups, change your pitch level. It also, like I said, this demonstrates confidence because being willing to take a pause shows that you are in control of the conversation. If you're in a conversation with someone and you take a pause and that person doesn't interrupt you, they wait for you to get ready, you are in control. It is your conversation. So I would say, hey, get used to pauses every now and then. Say something and take a 1 second pause just to add some contrast to what you're saying. On the other side of that, too, if you ask a question, for instance, in the job interview, usually you want to come prepared with a few questions. That's a good recommended job interview tactic. So if you have a job interview come up, make sure you have like 3 or 4 questions you're ready to ask your potential employer. Again, these are strategies we're talking about specifically for North America, but I think they can help in a lot of contexts. Make sure you give pause so that way they can actually answer. I would also say try not to ask multiple questions at once. This is a you may or may not have ever done an interview before, but a beginner interview mistake is that you ask multiple questions at once. Like if you say something like, "Hey, so tell me how you guys got founded and how you like working here." You just did too much. Because now they have to answer both those questions and they have to remember both questions and it's just a little bit disjointed. So what we do instead is we ask a single question. So how did your company get founded? And I don't care if you feel like you didn't word it the best or anything like that. You leave it. If they didn't understand it, you can ask a follow-up question afterwards, but just one question at a time. I don't care if you messed up the wording. I don't care if you're not confident in the question. Just ask the question, give them a chance to respond before you say the next thing. Give them their space. But again, that kind of ties into breaks and pausing. The other technique I want to go into is about breath. This relies back on things we've talked about before. This is also going to tie into our fourth point as well. American English, we are using our diaphragm. I hope if you're watching our videos, you're familiar with your diaphragm, but in case you're not, your diaphragm, again, is located here. It's the organ that's responsible for allowing you to breathe. So it has a pretty big impact on your life. The problem is in American English, we need to use our diaphragm. So basically, as you're talking, you need to constantly feel some slow contractions. So maybe you could see there my hands started moving in. You basically want, as you're talking American English, for your diaphragm to constantly be contracting and moving in constantly. Unfortunately, a lot of us are coming from languages that aren't necessarily engaging our diaphragm a lot when we speak. So coming into American English, we're not used to engaging it. So instead, we kind of like go up here and we use our lungs to do a lot of the work. And you can probably hear that my voice doesn't sound the same anymore. We need to use the diaphragm. You can tell you're using your diaphragm if you feel a lot of warmth in resonance. It's that low, bassy kind of. You hear that low, low, low. Turn up your bass. I'm gonna shake your floors. That's a sign you're using your diaphragm. If you're lacking that, if you're like kind of talking like this, like a da 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 da, da, I don't really have that kind of low bassy. Oh, now there it is. I just turned it on. You feel that? Okay. We need to get used to using our diaphragm. American English rewards that warmth and that resonance. That's what people are looking for. And so it's the same thing for job interviews. It can also be used as a tool to convey, again, confidence in what you're talking about. Always remember the interview isn't even necessarily about the questions and the answers you're giving, it's about the vibe you're giving off as well. They're trying to decide, do I want to work with this person for the next 5, 10 years? You know what I mean? Like it's a big commitment. So there's a lot happening and a lot that they're kind of evaluating on. This all of this ties in. So contrast with pitches, slowing down, breath, all of this ties into the very first interaction you have with them. So maybe you're in a waiting room or something. They call you in, you walk over, you shake their hand. This first interaction, the very first thing you say is probably the most important thing you say. And those first 2, 3 minutes of your job interview are probably the most important 2, 3 minutes of your job interview. So you really want to make sure you're conveying the you that you want to convey in those first 2, 3 minutes, because that first impression is going to be very difficult to shake. This is true for in person interviews, this is true for online interviews as well. Some common characteristics for both settings, whether you're online or in person. What we talked about, that low pitch, some other things. Things like intonation patterns, like rising intonation and up talk, that's going to make you sound a little bit unconfident, potentially, or at worst, it can make you sound annoying to the person you're talking to, and they will perceive you as not being mature or less mature and less able to handle your abilities. It's a shame that all this is just being conveyed by your voice, but these are things that people are picking up on in any language, right? Every language has cues that people are looking for. Social linguistics is a thing. Okay, so you're being judged on your ability to talk. So to make sure you're giving off the good impression, first things first, again, like we said, low pitches, or I mean, lots of resonance, lots of contrast with pitches. We're using breath. We're willing to take pauses. All these things play together. The very first words you say are extremely important. Okay, this is something that they talk about in one of the videos I put in the video description. Okay, which I really encourage you to take a look at. It's a really helpful video. Lots of insights into body language and stuff like that. So the first thing you say should not be, if it's an online interview, hey, oh, is my mic working? Hi, can you guys hear me? Not a useful. They'll let you know. If they don't hear you, they will let you know. Or you can save it. So the first thing is not that, like, hey, can you guys hear me? Hi, hello. That's not helpful. The first thing when you're introduced, the first thing you should say is, hey, thanks so much for having me. Or hey, my name is Jeff. I'm really excited for the interview. Okay, can you hear me okay? Like something like that. So start off with your introduction, start off with your hellos, start off, contrast with pitches. If you have a question about the microphone quality or make sure you're heard or understood, save it for the end. Don't rush into that. The very first thing you say is extremely, extremely important for conveying what you want to convey. I really, really can't emphasize that enough. The video I mentioned, again, they talk into other techniques that you can use as well that are really key to understanding for that first initial reaction. The last thing I want to discuss has less to do with pronunciation and more to do with your answering. Give me 1 second. This is not in the video description. Okay, so you will not find this in the video description. This is just what you're going to find now. Oh wait, I see there's a little issue. Give me a moment. I'm going to try to see if this fixes it. Okay, hopefully that one will work. You can copy and paste the text and play around with it, or you can just type in storytelling Renee Rodriguez. Okay. So, this is going to be our final point. And our final point is this: during the interview, or anytime you're giving an answer, you want to be thinking about stories. Stories are how we navigate the world around us. They're fundamental. We think in stories, we work in stories. Every everything you say has value. We don't have time to give short throwaway answers. Everything we say is important. Everything we say is an opportunity to demonstrate who we are. So, for instance, the example that Renee gives the example of, let's say someone asks you, what's your favorite color? And the immediate action might just be, oh, I like green. End of discussion. It's a horrible question, but also not a good answer. So, what you can do instead is you want to kind of think of it in a couple different parts. And this is not my strategy. Renee can go into much better detail on this than I can, but I will try to give it at least a little bit of justice. So, we want to incorporate a little bit more framing. We want to incorporate a change and we want to incorporate a tie in of some sort. For I'm going to focus on this example of green, which won't be able to incorporate all three of those points. If you're interested in the points, you can look at the full video, which I included. So, someone asks you your favorite color. The job interviewer asks you because they're doing that, like, I forget what they call it, the creative question. I forget what they call them. The job interview questions that don't really seem related to what you're doing. They ask you a question like that, like what's your favorite animal, things like that. If you were an animal, who would you be? They ask you a color. They ask you a question. What's your favorite color? So someone asked me, Jeff, what's your favorite color? And so someone, if I were going to answer that, I might say something like this. When I was a kid, it's funny because when I was a kid, my favorite color was black. And I know that black has a lot of negative connotations, but I was really into, things like Star Wars and stuff like that. All the bad guys, the powerful guys, they're all dressed in black. They're using the force, they're like throwing people around rooms. So black, when you're growing up, you're watching things like Batman. And this is as a young boy growing up, with the like TV and things like that. So you're seeing black associated with a lot of these contexts, I think, with power. You're hearing phrases, for instance, like black goes with everything. But then as I got older, I still liked it, but I found that there are a lot of also very negative connotations with black as well, especially like black is associated with being over emotional, dramatic, and things. And I was like, I'm not feeling this as much anymore. And also, even in the natural world, black, I mean, especially among like plants, like you think like deserts, you think jungles and things like that. And black isn't necessarily one of the most common colors, or like the most, I won't say like it's a natural color, but I think there's other colors that started standing out to me a lot more. And I remember we had taken a trip to the Grand Canyon with my parents, and the colors that stood out to me the most were especially those like earth tones, right? Like you see a lot of your browns, your burnt oranges. And to me, this conveyed a lot greater sense of peacefulness and also just almost awe in a way. Like you go to a desert and like you're just like surrounded by a very hostile environment, but at the same time, it's a very pretty environment. And I found that brown was actually kind of in some ways doing the same thing as I was looking for as a kid, like conveying that sort of power and hostility, but also I think with an added sense of beauty. So I think that's why my color of choice now, I wouldn't say is black, but I would actually say is brown. Or you could just answer my favorite color is green. So to tie this into interviews, trying to approach each question they ask you not just as like a one word answer. You're really trying to elaborate, but you're trying to elaborate in a way that's meaningful to your own life and your own experiences. Renee can give you much greater examples than anything I could right now. So I definitely encourage you to check him out. But those are 5 things that I think are going to be really helpful to your next job interview. Guys, I do have to run, but right before I head out, I do want to highlight one thing that's completely unrelated. Um, I mean, it's related to pronunciation. Everything is always tied into pronunciation. But the big thing is, I just want to update you on some news. It's involving our Telegram group. If you are interested in joining our Telegram group at its current price point, I just want to let you know we are really filling up. I have one spot left for our current price point of $10, but the price afterwards is going to go up. So if you are interested in getting daily American English pronunciation practice with me, you want to see the questions I ask and respond with your own audio files. It looks like this, and get feedback within 24 hours every single day of the week. This is definitely the time to join because the price is going to go up as soon as that spot is filled. So just a heads up, if that sounds like something you are interested in, you can go to fluentamerican.com/telegram. All right, feel free in the chat or in the comments afterwards if you have other tips that you think are helpful for job interviews. You can leave them. It'll be great to help each other out as we work through that process that can be frustrating, but is also an opportunity to better ourselves and get better at like giving answers and talking to people. Thank you guys so much for your time. My name is Jeff. It rhymes with breath. It's one of the 4 keys to a natural accent. We will see you all later. Hope you have a good day, a good night, good afternoon. You guys take care.